Nigel, thanks for coming on. Now, Nigel, why don't you? I hope my description was okay, but please, Nigel, just tell everyone in your own words a little bit more about who you are and what you do.
Adam, thank you very much for that introduction, and thank you for the invitation to do this podcast with you today. Looking back over some of your previous broadcasts, I'm in some very fine company. So thank you, I appreciate that. Um, I am Chief Executive of Ashberry Healthcare Limited. It's a company that was formed 21 years ago. I've been involved since 2016. Um, Prior to that, actually, I've been around the industry for a long time. My journey started in 1990, having spent the 10 previous years in the hospitality industry, running hotels, restaurants, nightclubs, all sorts of things. Um, and I joined a group at the time called Stakis. Rio Stakis was the founder, so Rio Stakis, which was a group comprising hotels, casinos, restaurants, essentially. So Rio Stakis was a very interesting and inspiring guy. And he had a very elderly mother that he couldn't find a suitable accommodation and provision for care for. And his response to that was, well, let's start a division within Stakis and um, open some care homes and see where we go with it. And his brief was very interesting and concise in that he sent us, a team of us, off to have a look around about 200 care homes in Scotland, which must have been pretty much the entire
All of
volume
them.
of Scottish homes at the time. Yeah, I guess. Yeah. And Stakis had a substantial land bank, which he made available to us, as well as sufficient funding. And so off we went. We bought two or three care homes that were in typically in older manor house buildings. And we started a very aggressive building program, mainly initially centered around Scotland. We built three in Glasgow and one in Edinburgh and Aberdeen, and then gradually spread south of the border, building high quality new build homes at the time. And how things have changed, actually. In those days, we used to put ensuite baths in every bedroom, which would be unheard of now. But they were good quality assets. And the only brief from Surreo with the new builds was that they had to be capable of converting to hotels if the care home sector didn't work, which was interesting and forward thinking in itself, I guess. So by the end of about 1992, I think we had 18 or 20, I don't remember exactly, homes. And Stakis found itself in some fairly severe um, trouble. Brought in a new chief exec, another very inspirational chap, guy called um, David Michels, or Sir David Michels as he now is, who joined from Hilton Hotels, took on the group. Very inspirational, easy guy to deal with, and he took us aside and said, "Look, chap," said, "I'm a hotelier by profession and a poker player by hobby or interest." And he said, "I'm really sorry, I've got to sell off some stuff here, and the care homes have got to go. But if you chaps can raise 50 million quid, you can buy it." And so four of us sat down around a table and wrote out checks, and we were 49,950,000 short, I think, of the target. And so as a bunch of 30-year-olds, we did some very fast learning. I mean, I certainly didn't have any financial background at all on how to raise money through venture capitalists and other funds. We managed to raise the fund and got the business away. And remained to be very well supported for the next couple of years by the investors. And roughly 2 years after that event, we became the second care home business to float in the UK as Ashberry PLC, which I sat on the board running the operations side of the business, and there I remained until the company was eventually sold off market to a company called Sun Healthcare in the USA, who broke it up and sold it. We had about 100 homes by then, from memory. It was broken up and sold to Southern Cross and Bupa and various other large operators who'd emerged during that very, very exciting, informative 10-year period when our industry was born. I then spent a few years doing some slightly different elements of the care business. I spent a couple of years on the board of a big dom care company, and a couple of years likewise with a learning disability company. And then went off at a complete tangent, actually, having been approached by some of the VCs that I'd originally worked with, and spent 6 or 7 years doing a veterinary consolidation across the UK, building a group of 60 or 70 vet practices, which was good fun. I then came back in to the social care market, spent a year or two doing sort of temporary and consultancy assignments before, in 2016, finding myself in Ashberry Healthcare, who at that time were a group with 8 homes, were frankly in one heck of a mess operationally. So I came in to help sort that out. I've been in the role about 6 months, and the owner of the company unfortunately died unexpectedly. The family members then asked me to stay on as managing director, which I did, and then spent the next 2 years trying to sort out the banks and the finance. So it wasn't just operationally in a mess, it was in a bit of a mess financially as well. And eventually in October 2020, I did my second management buyout, when we bought the debt from the bank, and started to really put the stamp on the business that I wanted to put on it. That incidentally was in the middle of COVID that we completed that deal, which may have worked in our favor as it happens, but nonetheless, we've come out the other side of that and gone from strength to strength, having early on, when we were having banking problems, sold a couple of the homes, but we're now about to be up to the 8 that we originally had, and they're all trading, touch wood, exceptionally well, both in terms of occupancy and profitability and quality.
I see. Yeah.
So that's been my little journey for the last
well, it's fabulous.
35 years.
As I said from the top of this podcast, a kind of rich and history, and you've seen a lot of twos and fro's in the sector. And interestingly, I think you probably, when you said, just curiously, you said you have been involved in managing nightclub establishments. I think you're probably the first nightclub establishment supervisor or overseer that's I've spoken to that's come into the care sector. So amongst
That was a
everything you said, that was very interesting.
that was a very small part of my
A
role.
small part of your role, I know. It was one
Yeah.
that stood out. So fabulous, so great. Thank you so much for sharing all of that. And and that leads us nicely into to summarizing this all up in terms of what we're going to be focusing on today, which is how to create, a valuable multi-home provider. So where in your mind do you need to start to think to prioritize in terms of creating this valuable multi-home operator? Tell me about the whole thinking that's required here.
Okay. I mean, that's not probably as difficult a question as it may sound, actually.
Hmm.
Um, I mean, you have to start by being committed to the journey that's ahead of you, and being in a position that you can deliver the leadership that's required, and ensure actually that you are developing other people to deliver the leadership as well, because you can't do it all yourself. And to me, that whole piece really starts with, what are your core values? What do you really believe in? And we have very, very set core values in this company that we all work to and believe in, and drive the way we do things. They're simple values, but they're there.
Hmm.
Um, and actually having the ability and the knowledge to underpin your journey with actually really good corporate knowledge of processes and procedures, but almost generating a family-run business feel, if that makes sense. So we still run this business very much from the top in terms of our involvement. So I visit all of our homes very, very regularly. I don't like going more than a couple of months of not visiting them, which can be a challenge given the geography. But actually, I trust my managers to run the business. We give them a great deal of autonomy, which some of them find it quite difficult to come to terms with at first, particularly as many of them have been used to working in environments where there are many levels of management between the owner of the business, or the owners, it's myself and my finance uh, director, Gary Cottrell, who jointly own the business. But we believe in giving our managers the autonomy. And as I quite often say to them, you're running sort of £2 million businesses in locations where they are almost certainly the largest or one of the largest employers, and therefore they need to think like a managing director of their business, because more or less half of that revenue that we generate is going back into the local community, by simply in terms of paying the staff that live in the community. And therefore, the flow of cash that's coming through our business and supporting the community is really, really important. And I think it's essential that the care home managers understand that, and it helps them to position themselves within their environment, if that makes
Yeah,
sense.
and curiosity question for myself is that care home managers may often see themselves as, responsible for the care of their residents and their teams. And, are might even, the idea of being, as you mentioned, an MD and thinking about the kind of things you're talking about, some, tell me if I'm right or wrong, may find that quite as an adjustment. And I'm curious to know if that is the case, or if you have found that is the case, how you've encouraged, nudged, or maybe hire people based or who are more likely to embrace that role that you're talking about.
Okay, so. of the seven managers I have at the moment, um, my two longest serving managers were both appointed by me in my first 2 months in the group, so 9 years ago. Neither of them had ever managed a care home before. One of them hadn't actually worked in care homes, been in the care sector.
Mm,
Um, and I was able to mold them and develop them and encourage them to get to where they are now. And they've both become actually award-winning managers in our industry. They're both
mm,
extremely good managers, but I mean, this sounds rather arrogant, but they've come up through the Nigel Denny School of Management because that's how I wanted them
mm, mm,
to join us. Our other managers, some of them have had quite a lot of experience in care homes, in care home management, some more limited, but I think without exception, they all find it refreshing to come and work in our environment, knowing that actually they haven't got anybody breathing down their neck telling them they've spent £2 too much on buying cabbages this week. That's not how we operate. They have the scope to operate financially within the parameters we set them. Now, it doesn't mean we make it easy. We don't, but we do encourage them to really think and plan. And crucially, we share financial information with them. I know a lot of operators don't do that. We do. We share financial information with them weekly, P&Ls, monthly. We budget directly with the managers. They, with assistance, effectively write their budget, determine where they think they can get their fees to, what they think they can do with their resident mix, and so on. So I think actually actually trusting your managers, we're all very keen to make them accountable and responsible for being care home managers. Every company does that.
mm.
But my view is you have to empower them to be managers as well.
Interesting. Yeah, particularly on the financial side and the sharing the P&L and being involved in that is something I don't always hear about. So that's very interesting. And I do hear this hiring of the manager is like the most important hire that often owners can make. And if I can just come back onto this core values that you mentioned and how important that is to you. Can you maybe just share with us about the core values that Ashbury embraces?
Sure. We have three core values, and the words actually appear around our logo now. I had them
Mm,
put a couple of years ago, which are loyalty, integrity, and compassion.
mm.
We expect every member of staff, from me through to carers, pot washers, home managers, to embrace those values in all that they do.
Yeah, yeah. I see, fabulous. Because and also I take note of the fact that you try and visit care homes regularly, and of course, just on the face of it, you can see how that important that is. But I guess also it's important that when you are visiting, it's the tone in which you are visiting and how, why are you there and how the relationship you have with your teams and your managers when you are there that maybe reflect those values that you are talking about. So, if I can ask you, we're going into a little bit of a detail here, but in terms of those visits like that you're making when you've seen everyone face to face, what's in your mind? What are you trying to communicate and convey when you're doing those visits?
Okay, I have to be sort of fairly careful with the visits now because initially it was just me in this
Mm,
company,
yeah,
um, and now I've been working very hard in the last 2 or 3 years in ensuring that we've got a succession plan of managers because I'm not going to continue in the role I'm in for necessarily a lot longer. I want to change slightly what I do. So I went through my first 4 or 5 years where I was the only contact with the managers and the homes. So um, I know them all extremely well. I know the buildings pretty much back to front.
Mm, mm,
I know a lot of the staff. I mean, we've got a lot of staff with over 10 years service, some with 20 years service actually. Um, so my visits now, I purposely don't um, generally speak about the performance of the home in financial terms to the managers. I leave that for others to do. And what I tend to get much more involved with now are the state of the buildings, what the next piece of refurbishment needs to be, um, how they're getting on with marketing the business, and actually hearing about what they're doing and what they want to tell me they're doing. But as well as that, actually showing some interest in the manager and the other staff in terms of, their families and so on.
mm.
And quite often, Gary and I do our visits together, and we go off on what's called we call a road trip, and we'll say, right, let's go and see the homes next week, and we'll go out for a week, and we'll stay away overnight, and
Yeah,
we always like in the evenings we'll take usually a couple of managers out for dinner
yeah,
together, and
yeah.
that's always it's always really really good. I have a good relationship with them, but I let the rest of the management team actually deal with the day-to-day stuff, and
Mm,
that's quite a hard thing actually for a business
mm,
owner to do. I've worked in some smaller companies where I know the owners find it difficult to actually let go of the real detail and the real financial detail, but you have to let other people grow.
mm, mm, mm. Yeah, sure. And I'm also interested to know about the processes because obviously you've had vast experience in this, in financing, acquiring homes, financing new acquisitions, management buyouts. Like, what if you, let's imagine we have a three home operator that's looking to expand. I think you've told me of your plans for expansion at the top of this podcast. But for those who are going down that route and may not necessarily have a huge amount of experience in doing it, what are the kind of things that you would like to convey to them? Any kind of, well, stay alert to this. These are the kinds of things you need to be thinking about. What would you like to convey on that?
Well, firstly, don't buy into this business if you haven't got any experience. It's too risky to do that, and I know people do sometimes take the view that, oh, let's invest our savings in a care home, and it's got to generate cash. It ain't as easy as that. You've got to know what you're doing, and have a clear view of what your model is. Raising finance is difficult. Now, obviously, you can normally raise finance against properties. I know a lot of care home operators lease their properties. We don't. We always buy the freeholds. And if you don't have your own capital to start with, getting that capital is difficult. Banks will lend a certain amount, of course, but
Mm,
actually you're almost certainly going to need to bring in somebody that will provide some equity to help you get going.
mm,
Um, and it's not always easy to do that, but there are plenty of people out there that can help with it. I
mm,
mean, generally, outside investors like the sector. They like the security of big bricks and mortar. They understand the demographics of an aging population and the increasing instance of dementia. So it's doable. But then the other thing is actually knowing what you want your care home to be, what you want it to be like, what your model is, because as you can have a care home from 10 beds to 100 beds. It's an entirely different prospect.
mm,
Um, and I've been through the whole process of doing new build 100-bed homes. And that's not where I want to be anymore. For us, our model is quite clear in terms of the size of operation, our mix between private and state funded, what our typical residents are going to look like.
Mm,
And we own care homes in locations which actually you'd think, wow, why are you there? I mean, we've got one care home in the middle of the Brecon Beacons, 10 miles from the nearest town, with nothing but half a dozen farmhouses within view, and yet we keep that home at 100% occupancy and
mm,
100% staffed,
mm, mm, mm,
because we're providing a service to local people. We're providing jobs that might not otherwise be there,
mm.
but we have an environment that people want to be in and work in.
And why is it you've chosen to kind of home in on that particular size rather than the kind of bigger builds? Tell me, share with us your reasoning
Well,
around that.
actually, the honest answer to that is the care homes I've got at the moment were the ones that were there when I
Right.
joined the
Yeah.
company.
Yeah.
With some exceptions, we
Yeah.
sold off two that clearly didn't fit the portfolio. So,
Mm,
our target size is sort of around about 50 beds. We don't go
yeah.
much over that or too much under that. Um, I mean, I work on the principle that actually for a manager to run a 100-bed home is almost impossible because they're going to have at least 100 staff that
Nice.
they need to know, at least 100 residents that they need to know, and at least 200 visitors that they need to know. You can't do
Mm,
it.
mm,
Um,
mm.
you six, I think 60 beds is about as big as I personally would want to go. You can keep them very personal, going that way, but they're big enough to have the volume uh, to make them work.
Yeah. Yeah. I
Um,
see.
I mean, our geography is interesting as well because we go from Cheshire to Surrey and Cardiganshire to Herefordshire and Warwickshire. So we really are scattered, but that's where they were bought. That's what we have to deal with.
Mm,
It does mean it's hard to interchange staff,
mm,
um, but you know, if you get your communications right, it can
mm.
work.
And another thing I'd like to talk to you about is this kind of styles of leadership. And again, you were hinting that at the very beginning, the values and your approach and how you look to empower and enable managers, for example, to take on certain responsibilities. There's many different styles of leadership in the care sector. You know, you've seen them, I've seen them. Where do you how would you characterize maybe if you can share a little bit more for the size of operators we're talking about, the kind of leadership that is best fitted to like a multi-home operator? And again, I guess it
Well,
depends how many homes, but very
yeah, sure.
generally, you know, if you
We
could share
we
with me what
we
your thoughts.
we've got a structure that will work for 100. Sorry, for 20 homes. It wouldn't work for 100. It will work for
Yeah, yeah.
20 homes, which we don't need to put too much more into. So I have somebody who leads the operations side of the business. So that includes everything to do with occupancy and marketing. And I have somebody that leads the quality side of the business, which means everything to do with compliance, quality control, provider visits, staffing issues, and so on. Um, and we have a really good marketing team who work for the ops director, but not part of the reporting line for care home managers. They very clearly report to the ops director and who is supported by the care director. So we're lucky we've got in those people that want to grow with the business that are happy to put in the hard miles, and they work damn hard.
Mm,
They work a lot of hours in the
mm.
business because they believe in it, and they
Mm.
are rewarded properly for doing what they do.
Yeah, and that's great. And another question I have for you, and share as much as little as you like, but kind of the mistakes that you've made that you feel, well, I've made that mistake. I'm happy to share it now so others don't make it. So is there anything that comes to mind?
Oh my goodness, where do you start with that one? Um, to be honest, I think the most important thing, or the biggest mistake you can make, is not getting your recruitment of your home managers right. But almost more important than that is not supporting them properly once they're in post, because they don't know how you want to do it. And you just have to get the communication right in this business. We have a fantastic communication network through our company now, or I think we do. I believe we do, um, where we have a clinical advisory board made up from people from all of our homes, not home managers. This is generally nurses or senior carers from the homes, but it's chaired by someone sort of senior in the company, and that has a lot of impact. We have weekly online managers meetings. We have regular manager sort of away days, which again, Gary and I nowadays we used to run them, but now we're kind of invited to the evening for to have dinner and pay for the drinks mainly. But and we do a lot of things to uh, really motivate, I hope, and enhance our staff experience. So, you know, we do um, we do annual care awards, which is a really big thing for us at every home. Really big party night out when we do that, and so on. Lots going on.
That's fabulous. Nigel, thank you so much. You shared a lot here, which has been very valuable. Is there anything that you've not touched on or talked about that you feel is important to share?
Well, I think the problem is, Adam, I could probably talk to you for a week and share lots of
Yeah, we can
things.
always do a part two
Oh,
episode at a later date. We can see
well,
about
indeed.
scheduling
Be careful what you wish for.
it.
Um, but no, I mean, I've enjoyed talking to you. You've led me uh, down certain paths, which it's been my pleasure to talk about.
That's fabulous. Great. Now, look, Nigel, if someone wants to pick your brains on anything, how might they best be able to politely approach you?
They can they can approach me politely or impolitely. If they go onto the Ashberry website, they'll find all of my contact details there or through LinkedIn. And I'm always happy to talk to anybody in this industry and meet them. And I try and support a lot of the networking events. So really happy for anyone to contact me if they wish to.
Nigel, thank you so much for being on the KSEO Success Stories podcast.
My pleasure. Thank you.